Hi, welcome everybody to episode 8 of the Flow Pro Show, our October episode. I'm Sandy Ucia, Sandy U on Twitter, and I'm coming to you from Northern California this month.
Yeah, and I'm Daniel Laskowitz at Laskowitz on Twitter, and I'm coming from Utrecht in the Netherlands.
And our special guest today is John Liu. If you want to introduce yourself, John.
Hi, I'm John N. Liu on Twitter, and the Flow Ninja. Usually I'm in Sydney, but today I'm from Perth. So
Yeah,
I'm closer to Europe and further away from America.
and we've made you stay up super late, and we're really sorry, but thank you very much for joining.
Yeah,
right.
how late is it there?
This is 3 a.m. 3 a.m. So it's right in the middle where you don't know which side you should approach it.
Right. So are you up late or early?
It's hard to know.
Okay.
I decided to have naps on both sides.
Oh, all right. Well, that's fair. Okay. Well, so as usual, we're going to go through some Flow news. It's been a little while since we had an episode, and then some community highlights, and then we'll talk to John and see what he's been up to lately. But also, as always, we'll ask our guests to chime in anytime he has comments on anything that we're talking about. So let's go. All right, some Flow news. Yeah, this was you, right?
Yeah. So there's a new white paper on how to build enterprise-ready flows. It has been released, I think it's a couple of weeks back now. And it actually includes lots of best practices in Flowland. It's a little bit heavy on the CDS side. So if you don't know a lot about that, you're going to learn lots of it. But I think this is really great that they are creating more white papers for these kinds of tools. I really enjoy the PowerApps ones a lot. And I hope they're going to update this as well. So with the new features coming up, and yeah, it's always hard to keep track with all the new features.
Right.
And I know it's a lot of investment to write these white papers, and yeah, to keep them up to date can be a really difficult task. But I hope they will, because it's really nice to have this. So if you haven't seen it yet, make sure to read it. It's really interesting.
It's like an 80-page PDF or something, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yep. Be sure to do that. I will be sure to do that also. But yeah, I think Microsoft is trying to really focus a lot on showing that Flow is enterprise ready at this point. Yeah. Because I think that's something that some people say sometimes that it's not. But so I see that their last several blog posts have kind of emphasized that.
Yeah, and that's also what they are targeting right now, right? So if you look at all the release notes from the last couple of months have been really heavy on the enterprise side. So lots of things were about solutions, lots of things were about, for instance, the build tools on PowerApps and Flow, and all those kinds of things are really the enterprise features they want to do. The DLP policy that's coming out at the end of the year, I think, that's also really enterprise heavy. And there's lots of other things. So yeah, it's interesting.
Cool. Next, secure and compliant automation. Oh.
Yeah, so that's also another. Yeah, it's kind of a blog post actually. They have some blog posts about the foundations of Flow. And they are actually emphasizing that they are really secure and compliant. You can do DLP, data loss policies, for instance. They are ISO certified. They have all kinds of security and compliance. On the foundations of Microsoft blog series, actually.
Okay.
And the next one, that's one that's also part of the foundations of Flow, but that's a different one.
Right, regarding automating approvals, because that is a thing that a lot of people are doing with Flow. And so this blog post really gets into talking about all the different types of approvals you can do, and how there are a bunch of different approval templates available that you can just kind of start out with and then tweak, and just the various approval scenarios that exist. And I noticed at the bottom of this blog post anyway, there's a list of Microsoft Ignite sessions for next week that are to do with approvals. There's the one that John Liu and Kent Weir are going to do, the bottom-up innovation that was listed here. So all of the Microsoft Ignite sessions are going to be live streamed for people who can't make it. So those links will take you to where you can watch those sessions going on. They also linked to one that Audrey Gordon is doing on approvals, apparently, and then also one that Stephen Siciliano is doing as well. And I'm
really
I'm pretty sure. Well, I'm sure that Serge Luca's Ignite session has to do with Flow. I'm positive.
Sure.
and no doubt approvals are in there, because I know he does a lot of that as well. I've been doing a lot of that, actually. I've been doing some Flow consulting and doing approvals specifically. So
approvals are really interesting, because that's always the scenario that a lot of people try first, actually. I see lots of people who are starting with Flow, and they want to have a simple manager approval, for instance. That's also what you see on the screenshot here, to get the manager and then do an approval. And recently they actually made the custom approvals, the custom responses. They made it actually free. It used to be a premium feature, and I'm really excited about that, because lots of people have been asking for it. And I think the usage wasn't that good, because lots of people wanted it for free and they didn't get it for free, but now it is for free. So I think that's a really good thing. And there's tons of new scenarios happening there every time they release something new. For instance, the approvals you can do in Teams, they are really nice. It's still lacking some features. I would love to see, for instance, a way to post the approvals to a team and then automatically assign that to the whole team. But that's not possible yet, because you can't add an Office group to an approval. So that would be interesting as well. But I hope they will announce it.
Yeah, I haven't actually tried, but can you add an AD group to an approval?
I don't think so, actually. Because,
so you can only do individuals?
I think it's because CDS doesn't use AD groups. So that's kind of the problem. And they have to fix that first, or build around it, and make sure that it can get all the different people in there.
Okay. All right, cool.
So currently you have to assign every person to an approval. If they change in the group, then it's different. So
Okay. I mean, I guess one way you could do that is have those people in a list or a field in SharePoint, whatever you're having approved, and then you can switch people in and out of those. So actually, so I have to maybe experiment with this. Like, I wonder if you put a group in the SharePoint list field, like, will it expand that group if you add that as the approval? Probably not.
I don't know, but it is also possible to get the members of a group, for instance, and iterate through those, and then assign them to the approval. So that's possible, but it should be more easy than that, right?
Yep. Okay. Yep. As with many things. Okay. Next up.
So next one, the Azure Active Directory support in the SQL Server connector has been announced. So use a server account or a Windows account to connect to the SQL Server connector. And now it's also possible to use Azure Active Directory. So when you would trigger from, for instance, the Power App, you can actually do that on the credentials that the logged in user has. So that's really an interesting way to do this as well. There's a small blog actually on the Flow site, but there's a link at the bottom of the blog to read more about it on the PowerApps side. So they have that available as well. So it's an interesting extra addition, and I think it's really nice that they are iterating also over all these different connectors, because they didn't do that before, or I think they could have done a better job at it.
How do you mean iterating over
the connector? So sometimes they just push out a connector and then they leave it be. They're like, we tick that box and that's it. And they are actually improving on existing connectors, and that's a really good thing, because they have done that really a lot lately with multiple connectors that are used a lot. So the SharePoint one is a big one, of course. The CDS one, the SQL Server is one of them. There are multiple ones, and I still have one big request, like Planner. Sorry. So no, there's still a lot to do, but I think it's good that they are choosing this path, because this is really welcome functionality.
Yeah, cool.
Oh, John is listening now, so now I can say it. No.
Okay. And next, Visio.
Yeah, so the Visio export is actually general available right now. I was a bit surprised, because I have done a preview blog about it way back.
So a while, yeah.
Yeah, it took a while before it got general available, but you can now export Visio diagrams from Visio to Flow, and then configure your Flow from there with the little steps and stuff like that. But you still need the Visio Pro or the Visio plan something.
Okay, so not the free one.
That. No, it's not free. No.
Yeah,
but yeah.
And so have you used that in sort of a production scenario yet at all?
No, I only did it with the preview, and I tried it on my own tenant, but I really don't see the use for it yet in my scenarios, because I usually just export the flows and import them and do stuff like that. So I can see that some people really like it because they are living in Visio. And they really like Visio a lot, but I'm not that tied into Visio, so that's a good thing.
I mean, I guess probably I'm thinking where that would really come into play is if you're using Visio to diagram the flow so that you can get feedback on it from the business users and things like that before delving into actually creating a flow.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
So that's a really good one. Yeah, and then the gateway management. There's a PowerShell module available now in public preview to manage your gateways, and that's really a welcome addition, of course. They are doing lots of work on the on-premises data gateway. They are also working on getting the data gateway available in different environments. So not only the default one, but also the other environments. So you can see there's lots of stuff happening there. And I think, that's really welcome. I'm currently actually at a customer that does a lot of on-premises data gateway stuff. So they do a lot of, for instance, CRM or dynamic CRM on-premises.
Oh, okay.
And they do SharePoint on-premises and all kinds of stuff. Power BI they do a lot with, so that's a lot of fun to work with, actually, because I didn't have a lot of work on that yet. So for me it's it's a new thing.
Oh, good. Cool. All right. And that's it for Flow news that we gleaned. Next up, some community things. We've got a couple videos lined up for you, or not lined up, but links that you can watch. One was one that I did with John Liu from Microsoft, which was about using the Graph API with Flow. And that use case was seeing if there was an event coming up soon that I wanted to see if the invited attendees had not accepted yet, then I wanted to send them a reminder. And so to do that, you have to get that from the Graph API because it's not part of what comes back from an event in Flow, actually in the Flow action. And so that video is about using the Graph Explorer and seeing how you get at that stuff from the Graph API, which really is not all that difficult. So I think we did a good job of making it easy to use for people and understandable.
Yeah. I think John is also a really big fan of this action, right? John? Yes, he's nodding.
Oh, okay. I can't see that.
So okay. Yeah, it's there's also a question from the chat from Reza. Okay. He's asking, invoke an HTTP request. Is this premium? And is. Yes, this is premium.
Yeah, it is.
It will save you lots of time, right? So that's the big plus side. So
and this isn't just to point out too. This is a different. There's a couple different HTTP request ones, and this is the one that's Azure AD HTTP request specifically. But yeah, so that's to connect to the graph.
Okay.
I've got actually a tip to add to this. Okay. It is a premium connector that can connect to anything that uses Azure AD. And Microsoft Graph is one of the most common ones, and it lets us invoke almost anything that's a delegate permission on the Microsoft Graph using this. But in addition, there are other APIs you can call. You can say call the Power BI APIs. They are also authenticated through the Azure AD. And when you set up the connector, you will use the api.powerbi.com instead. So various situations where you may create a custom connection, and that's quite a bit of work, and you just want to call one or two actions quickly, so you can use this. So it's actually more than just Graph, but Graph is where there's so many endpoints on it that we usually use this for Graph, but Power BI is another one that's very easy to use.
Okay.
Yeah. So John, what would be like the flip point where you would say create a custom connector or use this one? You said like if you want to do quick 2 calls to the Graph API or to a Power BI API, then it's fine. But what would for you, for instance, what would be the flip side? So if you have like 10 actions or 20 actions, when would you try to create a custom connector for it?
To be very honest, I don't think anyone should have to learn Swagger. Every time I do it, I just feel like that's the worst part of anything. Like I feel, this is my honest feedback, Swagger is for APIs to talk to APIs. It should be generated by code. Humans should not need to do it. So I understand, we are trying to connect to any kind of API. So currently, this is the way you have to do it. And sorry, I say Swagger. Let's change it to Open API. But from my viewpoint, I hope these are all robot things that will get generated and we never have to do it ever again. It's just not nice. But yes, that's where I stand.
Okay.
So when you say, when would you need to do it? Well, if you're trying to create a set of APIs for a power user to use and asking them to directly write this JSON is too hard, then yes, you should do that work for them and wrap it up and make it clean. Another situation is when we use the on-premises data gateway. So if you're calling a on-premises REST API and you want to wrap that up so it's easy to use. In fact, you kind of need to create a custom connection to call a on-premises custom API. So that's another scenario. You have to do it. But yeah, if you're just calling graph and you're comfortable calling JSON and REST URL directly, this is super useful. You use this for anything delegate. If you want to use application credentials, use the other HTTP one. That one for application. So this one's for delegate, the other one's for application credential. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And then this is one about that you had done, Daniel.
Yeah. That's a familiar name, but no, I created a little video about the new called Child Flow. That's actually a new action that's available. It's only available inside solutions right now. So you have to create a solution and then create a flow inside there to create a child flow first, and then create a new master flow where you can actually run the child flow. So you really have to do that inside a solution. And I believe that the Flow team is actually thinking about enabling it also outside solutions, but there's no definite answer on that. In my video, I also show that, for instance, on dependencies. So if you have a child flow and a master flow and you're deleting the child flow, then it will automatically give you an error message because the master flow is still there, and that will fail because you're deleting the child flow, of course. So those kinds of things are there because it's in a solution. And if it would be outside a solution, that's not available. So yeah, I think it's okay for them to say, like, we want to have it inside solutions. But I can understand other people that are saying, well, I don't want to do it in solutions and I don't want to use solutions that much. Especially the office people are tended to say that, right? But yeah,
I mean, I guess in that case, if it were outside solutions, then people would just need to understand that the onus would be on them to understand what all the dependencies are. And if they're gonna delete a child flow that a master flow calls, then they're gonna get a problem when they try and run that. And as long as they know that they're responsible for that now, I guess, yeah.
Yeah. So what I also found out was that solutions, if they are in the default environment, you can actually use them for free. But if they are in a different environment, you have to get a premium licensing. So if you, so you can create whatever amount of solutions you want inside the default environment. So that's.
And was that a change?
I think it was, because I never realized actually that that it was for free in the default environment.
Yeah, I mean, I thought I had heard people saying about that in the past.
I don't know if it's a change, but I just realized it a couple of weeks back, I think, or a week back. So that's kind of interesting.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, I haven't tried this yet, but I'm looking forward to it because there's so many applications where it'd be great to be able to design flows more modularly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's also some kind of trick you need to do when you are, for instance, running a child flow with a SharePoint action, because normally it would run under the credentials of the person who's, especially when you use the manually trigger a flow, it runs under the person who actually created that flow. Right. And if you want to use the child flow, you want to switch it to the embedded connector or the embedded connection. So that you already pick like the right connector or the right connection to SharePoint, for instance. So it always runs on the one account.
Okay. All right. That's good to know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Otherwise, your child flow will fail, and you will think like what's happening. And
So I don't. Is that in the documentation by chance?
I haven't.
Oh, or is there documentation?
No, I don't
Okay.
think so.
Okay.
Preview,
All right.
preview, Sandy.
Yeah, yeah,
Preview.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's
I'm
preview,
sure there will
so.
be. Okay. Oh, true, true. All right, fine. Well, then we'll document it.
Yeah.
All right. And next, we have a video with John in it, with also John Lebec.
Oh,
Sorry, I
John
didn't
and
put
John.
Yeah. And that was about the conditional triggers, which are newish. They, I guess they were new at the time you recorded the video, and this just came out in early October. So do you want to talk a little bit about that one, John?
Yeah, so John Levis and I recorded this a few weeks after we saw this appear in Flow. In the settings, so in the backstage behind every trigger, there is a way to write an expression to do a trigger condition. And that's very useful to filter out. Basically, if that Boolean condition is not true, the flow will not run. And it could make your flow run history really tidy. Another scenario is if you're using, say, SharePoint as a state machine, so you wanted your flow change to trigger only when the states change from A to B or B to C, then you can build a bunch of on item is created or modified, but only when the status is now B or when
Cool.
it's now C. And you can use that to build kind of the tiny steps in a state machine.
Nice.
Yeah, so very fun. And there was, we went a bit crazy in the video. At the end, there was some really hacky, there was this crazy HTTP with trigger. I won't spoil it. It's super fun, super
Okay.
hilarious.
Okay.
John Levis and I had a lot of fun recording. It was just so much. We were just laughing. We can't even keep our face straight.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll have to watch. I'll have to watch
It's
that
very
then.
funny.
Closer. And so is it true you're kind of on your own with the writing the condition, right? Like I don't think there's any kind of wizardy thing or helps, right? You have to kind of know what the syntax is.
Yeah. So in the video, we did use a compose. So do it inside the flow, use a compose and the expression builder to help you build that. And then, and it's also good to test without, so you want to test your condition without setting the condition in the trigger.
That makes sense.
And once you have it correct, then you copy that and put it into the trigger.
Oh, great tip.
So that's our tip inside the video. And how do you do that?
Okay.
Because while you're still building the condition, you don't want to write this wrong, and now you can't even trigger it to test. It's kind of like, okay, it's not. Yeah, so you kind of want to leave that completely blank so you can keep retesting, get your condition correct, and then paste that back in.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I know you're a big fan of Compose too, but yeah, I use Compose a lot when I'm trying to come up with some syntax for some other thing or know what the how to create a dynamic token if it's not creating automatically or something, then I'll use Compose and then copy the result. Sort of, kind of. Okay.
Sort of, kind of.
All right, so next up is our special guest, John Liu, the Flow Ninja, and so we wanted to bring John on. We've been wanting to have John on the show for a while now, and we wanted to see what he's been up to lately because he has been the main mastermind behind FlowStudio for a while now, but you've got some new things to talk about, and I'm gonna let you demo and so on. So we'll let you, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and.
Okay, I will share my this.
Okay.
We now have Daniel really big. Cool.
Well, thanks, John.
No, I mean scale. It's all relative. We have more Daniel. Where is it? Okay, here we go.
Okay.
So so this is a very quick presentation I did at our SharePoint Saturday Sydney.
Okay.
And I had this picture in it.
Nice.
See, there's Sandy and Daniel.
Oh,
and,
oh yeah.
and-
Oh, I remember that.
yeah, that was a long time ago. So in this
Oh, but
I
you
just
but you weren't there, were you?
No, I was. Look.
Yeah, he was
Oh,
there.
that's right. Oh, that's right.
I was there.
Awesome.
That's why I kept it. Oh, there's Anton. And in this video, in this sorry, not, that's hilarious. Now, actually, how do I go back? I think I zoomed in quite a lot. Okay. So in this talk, I had gone through a lot of the governance tools that are available in the Power Platform. And this is a super quick overview. And I like this deck because it kind of positions what the two tools I built are. So I have built Flow Studio, which I've recently renamed to PowerStudio. And then I built a second tool called PowerClarity. And so I kind of wanted to very quickly just go through what these are and why they are positioned. And when we talk about governance in the Power Platform, out of the box, you have these four. You have the the admin portal for the Power Platform. You have all the environments, which are containers for where you go and put things. The DLP policies inside the environments, and then your default permissions. So whether someone is an admin or whether they're a maker. Microsoft, actually, I might just share this. Yeah, so this is something that Microsoft released as a sample back in, let me get it right, probably early 2018. And this is basically a Power App that uses the Power Platform connected to see what apps are in your environment. So it's a blog post from the early 2018. You could just install this. And when you run it, the Power App will use it to read all your apps. And that's what they look like. So basically on the left, you can select environments and you can see this list of Power Apps in your environment, 12 apps. This is super easy to do. And I think a lot of people's their own kind of, as you go beyond what's out of the box, which is the admin platform, this is almost the first step. You say, oh, okay, let me just quickly spin out app and have a look at my own thing. Now, this would quickly run into scale problem because as your environment grows much, much bigger, it gets very slow to read everything. And then that's where I also aligned the first thing I built. So the first tool I built, which is this one. So Flow Studio is really, I started building it because I have too many flows. I now have 530 flows.
Thanks.
So I created my own flow governance problem for my one-person tenant. Because there's some crazy guy in my tenant won't stop making flows. Nobody else in this tenant, which is only one person, could find where all their flows are. So I talk about myself in the third person. But basically, so I built Flow Studio, and the way this works is actually really similar to that Power App, right? Like when you run Flow Studio, it goes and read your environment and it draws this big list. We try to pull out all the different columns, including your flow run, so you can see, oh, what's been running. That's a pretty hard thing to figure out. What's been running? What are the ones that run the most?
Yeah, it's so nice to see all that at one glance.
Yeah, and you might say, well, John, most people don't have more 50 flows.
But still.
But there is actually a specific case of person that has that many flows, and I will explain. And this was not obvious when I built the tool. I kind of imagined everyone would be crazy like John and makes hundreds and hundreds of flows. In the real world, people have far more self-control. But the case that where this is really needed is an individual may not have 20, 50 flows, but they make flows that are business critical. And then the admin creates a service account and make that the owner of the shared. So basically a shared owner of every business critical flow, right? So that's a very common scenario. Almost every company does this. So in Flow Studio, a lot of people that are using Flow Studio here just to see what their flows are doing. These are admin service accounts. Okay, I have hundreds and hundreds of people using it. They are admin users, and they are not exactly looking at their own 20 flows. They are actually looking at maybe 200 flows tied to a service account. And these are all created by other people. Every one of them is a team flow. So that's a super common scenario. In fact, probably the biggest category of people use Flow Studio uses it in that fashion. Like you're almost not managing the flows that you created, but the flows that you still have to manage and view them anyway. So from that angle, it turns out to be kind of a really popular tool for that scenario. If you're an admin and you need to understand, oh, there are 200 flows assigned to the service account. Are they failing? Are they doing okay? Are they eating all my runs? So then the service account needs to buy more runs. That kind of scenario, you kind of need a tool like this to figure it out. That's the first part. And then, so that's the first two. So I kind of and then Flow Studio got renamed because I added PowerApps to it.
Okay.
So now I get to call it PowerStudio. Yay! Actually, I do want to announce I have been thinking about this for several months, and the code has not been changed, but I wanted to explain. The way Flow Studio is done is that it's a premium tool, right? So the Flows and PowerApps, just to see your Flows and PowerApps, this is always free. These two are always free. Now the add-on was, you could do a full text search, you can migrate, you can do.
And what do you mean when you say migrate, John? Just so people know.
So migrate is when you can create a migration plan, particularly if you are using. So if you create, say, a document approval workflow in a SharePoint site, and you want to copy that to, let me see that one. So you have the same flow on one site, but you want to copy it to different URLs in SharePoint. So migrate lets you set up a plan. I want my flow here to be copied to this funky site. Change the list, change the variable, and then when you hit run, it will copy the definition, replace all the connections. It will basically do a flow deployment by copying definition and switching out the connection in about 2 seconds.
Saving hours of time.
Yeah, and the thing is, you want to get it to a repeatable step. You just want to be able to say, do this all the time. This works cross environment, so you can copy across environment. It also means that you could say dev environment is John, but in the prod environment, I want these to be service accounts. So you can switch the connections on the destination as well. So one of the power features here. Now, what I've been thinking for a long time is this. When people sign up to, or actually no, when people first use Flow Studio, they have everything for free on trial. But at that point, they may not really know how to go in and use this advanced stuff, right? And then as you use it more and more, then you realize, oh, I could really use migrate, but my 1 month free trial has finished. So they can't really go into these sections afterwards. So I always find that, oh, it's a tool that has a lot of people using it, but they end up just using the free part. So the big change I wanted to make, and this I think will help me, I guess I'm kind of projecting what I'm thinking, is that instead of just doing you don't subscribe so you can't use, I'll basically have a big number here. Like, imagine every day you get 5 tickets, and you could, every premium action you do, this number goes down. Right? So you can migrate 5 flows, and that's it, you're stuck. You don't have any more freemium. So the idea is that you could always go in. If you just, one of the features add a JSON. So add a JSON is a super powerful feature to edit the flow definition. You probably don't use it that much. You might do it once in a while. So that gives you a way to just use that. But if you're a heavy user, beyond 5, it's very easy to understand. Okay, I use all these premium features all the time. The 5 free is just not enough. So I will just subscribe. So I think that will help get everyone more familiar with the whole suite of everything.
Get them hooked, in fact.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, right. Like this thing, if you migrate 5 flows, that's your one shot. So if you migrate 5 flows and you go, oh damn it, I want to do it again. Well done. It's only $20 a month. So I think that would be a good way to really let everyone have a go. Like sometimes, I will say, oh, just edit that JSON a bit, then you can tweak the flow in a funny way. But then they don't have the free trial anymore, so it's really hard for them to say, oh, I'm going to spend $20 just to edit one flow. So I think with that, I could introduce someone to that premium feature, and they could get those simple things done. But as they become addicted, as they become a power user, then they could subscribe and support that work.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about you, but my time is worth more than $20 a month, personally.
Yeah. So John, are you also working on cross-tenant migration?
No, not with cross-tenant here. I thought about it, but it's hard, and I'll explain. Because FlowStudio is a browser product, and you're logged into one account at a time.
True.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult for FlowStudio to say, oh, I'm gonna start from here, and oh, by the way, I'm gonna, you know how it is with Microsoft accounts. Like signing into the correct account is hard enough. Trying to handle 2 at the same time, 2 sets of cookies, it just, I just think about it and I already think, oh, the support for it will kill me probably. No. I thought about what if there's a different way? What if the migrate supports some sort of zip? So these are zipped, and then you have to log anyway. You have to log out and log in. It got really difficult. I thought about it for a long time how to do it. It got pretty hard. But what you can do is you can use the export import to just import them into the environment. And then you can actually use the migrate to fix all the connections. So you can actually set the source and destination to be both the same production environment. Then it's not really a migrate, it's more like a bulk edit.
Yeah.
So maybe there's a different view of this where it's just one column, because all you're really doing is for this set of flows, I want to change all their connections to something else. So it's like a bulk editing rather than a migrate. That is something. And that scenario is super useful if a user is leaving the organization. Like imagine John is leaving and we want to just switch everyone to the service account. That's a bulk edit. Like currently, I have a video that says you can use migrate to do that scenario, but really it's a bulk edit kind of scenario. Yeah. Anyway, that's 1, 2. So it is a power tool, mainly designed for that maker, but it has been used as well by administrators to manage individual service accounts. And then earlier this year, so this tool I started building in 2018. In 2019, I started building Clarity. And recently I put in a really nice website. So
I saw that.
It's
it is very
distracting. Nice. The 4 personas.
Uh-huh.
And there was a lot of talk about Power Platform governance in recent days. And I really wanted this. The idea of governance ultimately is that you have business that are utilizing the agile nature of the Power Platform to quickly build apps quickly. You could test your idea, see if it's an app that's going to work, and then deploy it quickly. But then you have IT that still has to make sure, your data protection is not lost, policies are applied, and so on. There is a subgroup with security. Maybe they want to understand cross-tenancy data, or even being able to whitelist and blacklist SharePoint URLs. And then ultimately your leadership, and I really think it's these two. If your IT cannot support the apps you make, then your makers will be bogged down with how many they can build, right? They can't just, a maker will understand you, you just really love making these apps and flows, but you don't want to support them, so you throw them at IT, but then IT has no idea how you build them. So at some point, there's a scale problem, right? So you kind of your IT need to be able to manage that. Otherwise, your maker need to have some way to maintain your existing app. So that's the first part. The second part is you want to see how your platform is used and understand your investments, because then you could say, oh, okay, these apps are built, and they cost roughly this much, and we're seeing this much usage, so this is great. So with that unlocks the business to say, yes, we want more of this. So and the premiums are bought for these licenses, and they're totally worth it. So we need to be able to see that at the leadership, at the kind of the enterprise level. The third one is really the thought about partnership. You have to have your business agility, your IT supports all these critical systems, and then your security team is happy with the data policies are being applied. So you want the partnership that different teams in your org actually work together. And that's with all the ultra successful Microsoft examples of the cloud platform, like Virgin Airlines, Heathrow, or many of these ultra successful companies. You have this partnership between the business and the IT, and that's when the Power Platform is most really supported. There's a mega growth of the makers in that org, and then while you have this mega growth, IT is able to manage that correctly and grow with that, right? So IT is not just, oh, it costs us money to keep the lights on or lock everything down. No, the IT is, they get the budget to increase their team to support all these systems. So they grow with the business as well. So that's usually what I want to see and what I want to help build.
Okay.
That's a high level picture, very high level. Now, Clarity is really just a super powered version of Flow across the whole. Looking at one user, Clarity can see everything. So the Clarity scanning is not done in the browser. So unlike PowerStudio, you don't have a wait time of going, oh, let's wait for it to go and check out my environment. Clarity is always scanning in the background. These fields are always ready. And because technically it's like a second build, Clarity doesn't really care what your environments are. Environments is just a virtual container. It doesn't really care. Another thing that Clarity does is it picks out, say, SharePoint URLs and dynamic sites. So it says, oh, these flows and these Power Apps belong to these URLs. So as Clarity is gathering information, it just works it all out. So you already know what they are. One of the funny ones here where Clarity can detect your flow is cross-tenancy. This one is where is this? That one's John Liu 365, and that one is SharePoint Guru 365. So it can detect flows that are going cross-tenant. That one will raise a red flag. So a lot of stuff. And the other thing is Clarity reads all the flows all the time. So that, I hope, fingers crossed. Yeah, that one is quite a large run. That one's so Clarity scans all my flows. The busy ones are scanned probably once an hour. The less busy ones are scanned once a day. Like it automatically throttles. These are 6,400 flows that run in my tenant in the last seven days.
Okay.
This is flow failures. So I have
That's
5
only
failures.
that's all the runs, right?
Yeah. So this is 6,400 runs. I have only 5 fails. That's pretty good. That's good. And Clarity digs into, this is not tidy up yet, but it tells me the action and what actions fail. You know, when you say,
Nice.
oh, you have a null, there's some sort of null being sent to XML here.
Mm.
I don't know what changed. I should go probably check that out. And then, so because I think about it, it's something that's scanning all the time. So the moment it sees your flow fail, it could send you an email, or you could call your webhook, or you could do a daily summary. And that's for active events like flow failing. But also as people are creating connections, flows, power apps, people create a flow that's crossing a tenant boundary, people create a flow that connects to a SharePoint URL that's not on the whitelist. These are all events. So Clarity, if you think about it, it's a massive event generation system. Like it creates a whole bunch of events that you can then use Flow to handle, right? Like we use Clarity to monitor Flow, and then we use Flow to handle the monitoring of Flow anyway, in a very nerdy way.
So somehow in there's like a place to create alerts or something where you can configure.
Yeah, so I can't show you that yet. So currently all the email alerts and webhooks are hard-coded in the settings. But ultimately there's a new section here called Automate, where you will be able to go in and say, okay, for this type of event, I want that to be email that's once every 7 days, or I want that to be email once every hour.
Cool.
Getting flows email to you once every hour is a great idea until you realize how many are failing all the time. It turns from a great idea into a very bad idea very quickly. You're just self-spamming now. But that visibility is very good. And also you could say, oh, I want the email to be sent to the maker. Or maybe it's a daily digest email sent to the maker. There are also rules, like we want to say things like, if your flow has just continuously failed for the last 30 runs, I'm just going to stop it now. We're just going to email you about it, but we're just going to stop it running. There's no point. It's not being successful. So something like that. Similar to Power Apps, in Power Apps, if you see an app, generally in terms of Power Apps governance, if you see an app that's been shared 5 times, you say, well, that's a business critical app. With Flow, something like that, similar, where we say, if a flow runs more than 5 times a day, it's most likely a business critical flow. So there's a default setting. We'll toggle it on, watch it more frequently. But we'll also ask the maker and say, hey, can you confirm you just make these new flows and new Power Apps? We need you to tell us, are these business critical or are they personal? If they're a personal flow, we don't care. We'll scan it once a day, but otherwise it's yours. We don't care about what you do in it. But if it's a business critical flow, we want to scan a lot more frequently. There are more reports that will run on it. We need a service account. We can't have just you on it. We must have a service account attached to it. And that means when you leave the company, the service account will continue to flow. So there's a whole lot more governance and policy that kicks in when you say this is business critical. So that's kind of the overall thinking around, what a more thorough idea of governance is. In the last few weeks, there's a lot of chatter about about we don't really we haven't implemented the governance properly for the Power Platform, so maybe we just want to control it at the licensing level. That is, some organizations need that, but I think a majority of organizations and IT, because they don't really have tools like this, they feel like, oh, okay, we're not at the level of maturity to be able to see what are the new makers coming on board and what licenses they have, right? They may come with their own license, or whether, whether they come with their own license or whether we assign them a license, they are still bound by the DLP policies, and then they're still bound by all these business critical checks and policies that we'll see. So a lot of conversations in the last 2 weeks will cover. I talked to people and businesses about how, at the bare minimum, you should go into the Power Platform admin center, set up some base DLP policies, and that will always protect your organization. But then going beyond that, there are simple solutions like just running PowerStudio once a week and getting a hang on what's going on. And then there are more complex solutions where you say, okay, our org has 500 or 5,000 assets, and Studio is just too slow to try to read everything. We need the monitoring and the governance to be automated, and that's where Clarity is. So you have the manual tool, and then you have the auto tool, right? And think about it as a scaling. Do you want to manually go in every Monday and just check the health? And that's something you could do. That's something you really could do. Flow Studio and PowerStudio will let you do that very quickly. You just quickly see what's failing, and if everything's okay. But at a certain scale, that's just too hard. So you need it to be automated. So automating the governance of the Power Platform. That's the second product.
Awesome.
So I wanted to show these two and particularly discuss how they work with each other. That's, I guess, yeah. Hope that's a good intro. That's a very long intro.
No, that's
really
great.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see how that would really either tool would really benefit people who are heavily using any of the Power Platform, really.
Yes.
Yeah. So we really appreciate showing.
I took power governance. Look, it's a word that's not taken. .com. Look at that. That's a redirect. See, I took it. So maybe I have to make that the main website because that has much better Google juice. I'm still thinking.
Governance. Sounds good.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay, well.
Yeah, John, there has been a lot of work into this, probably.
Yeah, clearly.
How many nights did you work on on both tools now?
I've lost count.
I'm sure.
But it's a lot of fun. And actually, if you think about both three APIs and put them into a grid, that's very similar. So sometimes people say, "Oh, John, with all the work you do on Clarity, are you, abandoning Studio?" And I just want to say, no, I'm not. And I really see them as tools that have some overlap. So they will both keep going. And Studio has now crossed 2,400 users. It's insane.
Nice.
I never thought there would be that many. And a lot of them, I think, would, as I get them addicted, as I get them see the value, I think I could say, look, if you're an admin and you have to go in every Monday and manage 500 Flows and PowerApps, really, Clarity will be the better product for that. There's some number, I don't know what that is, but once you cross it, you just say, you know what, I need what I do to be automated. I don't want to go in Monday and wait for Flow Studio to read 500 things. So in fact, you want it to be delegated. You want the errors to be sent back to the maker. You don't even want to go and look at it. You just go, there's a policy, it's sorted, and the maker don't fix it, it's just going to automatically shut it down. So they will have, I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
We're dreaming it as we go, looking for partnership. We want to help businesses that want to bring their teams together. Like governance is to bring the teams together to really make use of the Power Platform. If a business thinks about, oh no, let's just lock everything down, then you don't really need governance. You could just fire everybody. That will also work. But the best partnership, the best businesses that want to get the most out of the Power Platform, we want to help. We want to help that. Yeah,
So what
cool.
should people do if they want to try out either of these tools, John?
they should look at these 4 and see who they are. Maybe they're here and here. Maybe they're here. And then they should click this button.
Okay.
And then, and then I'll render a demo.
And that's at PowerClarity.app, right? Yeah.
Or powergovernance.com, which is
Yeah. Okay.
yes.
Or PowerStudio.app also for the PowerStudio, right?
Yes.
Okay. As far as what URLs they should go to. Okay. All right. Great.
So the slide you have is very good.
Okay. Oh, awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks a lot, John.
Yeah, really appreciate it. And
really
I guess
excited. Thank you.
Sure. I think that wraps us up for today. I guess we don't have a date set yet for our November show, but I think we'll probably be heavy on Ignite announcements, I think.
Yeah.
At that point.
Yeah.
I assume something will be announced at Ignite having to do with Flow. So some various things that will be news to us. So we'll need to have a wrap up episode.
Yeah, probably. So then we can tell everybody what's happening when and those kinds of things. So we probably have to chase the Flow team for all the dates, but we'll make that happen.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks very much, everybody, and thanks to for everybody who joined. We really appreciate it, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.